Today, we are immersing ourselves in, the philosophical tension that pulses right beneath the surface of modern commerce and fashion. We are going to be using these specific texts from the Alex Sylvestre Shop as our foundational material for this discussion. On the surface, if you just glance at it, it is a digital storefront offering apparel and accessories.
Right, it looks pretty straightforward at first.
Yeah, but when we look closer at the language, the incredibly careful curation of its messaging, a profound question emerges about the nature of modern streetwear and, frankly, human desire. So here is the central tension we are exploring today. When a brand offers premium streetwear with a minimalist edge, does its primary value lie in the aesthetic elevation of the wearer's identity, or does it fundamentally rest on the material reality and functional comfort of the garments themselves? I will be arguing that the core ethos of this material is fundamentally about aesthetic elevation and visual identity.
And I will be arguing that the true foundation of this text, and by extension the brand it represents, is rooted firmly in functional comfort, craftsmanship, and tangible quality. While the visual elements you just mentioned are certainly present in the material, I believe they are secondary. The text anchors itself repeatedly in the physical, tactile reality of the garments. Without that material foundation, those lofty aesthetic promises would collapse entirely.
Let's jump right into the material, because when I read through the Alex Sylvestre Shop text, the first thing that hits me is that this isn't just a catalog. It reads like a manifesto for aesthetic transformation. The very first command that text issues to the reader is not about utility. It doesn't tell you to stay warm or get comfortable. It issues a directive to elevate your style. And this is immediately reinforced by the shop's central tagline, elevate your everyday style. The repetition of the word elevate is crucial here. To elevate is to lift up, to transcend the mundane reality of the day-to-day. The brand's primary utility, therefore, is elevating the wearer's social and visual standing. When the text describes its offerings as having a minimalist edge, it is pointing to a deliberate stylistic philosophy designed to project a specific identity into the world. Minimalism in fashion is not simply an absence of style. It is an incredibly loud assertion of sophistication.
I come at it from a different way. I hear you, and elevate your style is definitely a prominent phrase. It's the hook. But I think you might be mistaking the hook for the actual foundation of the house. The true philosophy of the brand is found in its explicit promise regarding the physical experience, which follows right alongside it. Comfort you crave. Let's ground this for a second. Craving is a biological imperative. It is a visceral, somatic reality. Think about waking up on a cold morning. You don't crave an aesthetic. You crave warmth. You crave a physical sensation.
But notice how...
Let me just finish this thought. Style is abstract, but comfort is undeniable. Furthermore, look at how the brand story section begins. It starts with the phrase, crafting premium streetwear. Look at the specific word they chose there, crafting. They didn't say designing or curating. Crafting implies physical labor. It implies the touching of textiles, the friction of the stitching, the weight of the cotton.
Notice how that sentence finishes, though. It says crafting premium streetwear for those who value quality and style.
Exactly, but quality precedes style in that very sentence. It emphasizes the tangible value of the material reality over purely abstract visual concepts. The clothing must be inhabited. It has to perform its biological function of protecting and comforting the body long before it can ever be perceived by the outside world. If a garment doesn't function as a comfortable shelter, it fails its primary objective, regardless of how it looks.
I think we need to dive deeper into the duality of the slogan itself, because it perfectly encapsulates where we diverge on this text. The text reads, "Style you wear, comfort you crave." The sequence of those two concepts is not accidental. Style comes first. The visual signifier precedes the physical sensation. When we look at the shop categories provided, ranging from high-quality t-shirts, streetwear, and hoodies to accessories, these are presented as tools for self-expression. They are categorized by how they define the wearer's outward presentation. You are building the structure of how people perceive you before you even speak.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on this.
The concept of a minimalist edge mentioned in the brand story is primarily an aesthetic statement, not just a physical trait of the garments.
By placing style at the forefront, the text acknowledges that in the context of streetwear, the visual impact is the primary currency.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. You cannot separate the word wear from the deeply physical act of putting a garment on a human body. Yes, style is the first word in the slogan, but look at the verbs associated with these nouns. Style, you wear. Wearing is a functional, everyday necessity, but more importantly, let's look at the second half. Comfort, you crave. As I mentioned before, craving operates on a fundamentally different, much deeper psychological level than aesthetic appreciation. You might admire style, you might appreciate an edge, but you crave comfort. Craving elevates the functional utility of the clothing far above the visual style. Let's look at the reality of streetwear. If the garments lack the tactile quality promised by the phrase crafting premium streetwear, the minimalist edge falls completely flat. A minimalist aesthetic on a poorly constructed, itchy, uncomfortable hoodie is entirely meaningless. The text's promise of premium relies on material execution. That makes the biological craving for comfort the ultimate arbiter of the brand's success.
It's fascinating that you separate the aesthetic from the physical so cleanly, because I think the text actually merges them, but always in service of the visual. That brings us to a section of the source text I believe strongly supports my position, the gallery. The text explicitly describes the section as street-style moments captured in every frame.
But a photograph is just a representation.
Hold on, let me really unpack that phrase, because it is heavily laden with performative meaning, captured in every frame. Think about scrolling through your feed and seeing that perfect, effortless outfit caught mid-stride. That is what this brand is selling. It proves that the brand is inherently visual and performative. Streetwear, by its very definition within this text, is about how the clothing is perceived in a specific moment, frozen in time, captured within a frame. It is meant to be seen, photographed, and codified as culture. And the text invites the user to join our circle, to stay updated with exclusive drops and offers. A circle implies an in-group. It's a community built on shared aesthetics. The use of the term exclusive drops is incredibly telling. It emphasizes the social cachet, the scarcity, and the cultural exclusivity of the style. It mirrors the art world. This isn't just about getting a shirt to keep you warm. It is about the social performance of wearing the brand. It is about signaling to others that you are part of the circle.
That's a compelling argument. But have you considered the mugs?
The mugs?
Yes. Seriously. Look at the categories in the text. It sits right there next to the hoodies and the shirts. Mugs. A coffee mug is perhaps one of the most mundane, highly functional, unperformative items one can interact with on a daily basis. Its inclusion in the shop categories proves that the brand's true alignment is with everyday, practical utility rather than just high-minded performative street fashion. Think about it. A mug is not a street-style moment captured in every frame. A mug sits on your desk while you work alone. It holds hot liquid. It provides physical warmth to your hands on a Tuesday morning. It is a profoundly private, physically comforting object. If the brand were purely about outward aesthetic elevation and social cachet, a mug would dilute that message completely. Instead, it grounds the brand in the reality of everyday living.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. And just a quick note in the middle of our discussion, I want to remind viewers that they are listening to Alex Sylvestre Shop, or rather, a deep dive into its philosophy. So, regarding the mugs, I don't think their inclusion negates the aesthetic primacy at all. Rather, it colonizes the private sphere with the brand's visual identity. Even in the deeply private act of drinking coffee, the consumer is participating in the minimalist edge. You are curating your private life with the same visual rigor as your public life, and that brings us to the core of minimalism itself, which is heavily emphasized in the brand story. I argue that the minimalist edge is a highly sophisticated design choice meant to strip away excess noise. In the complex, often chaotic landscape of modern streetwear, which is full of loud logos and competing colors, minimalism allows the wearer's elevated identity to stand out. It is essentially the architectural concept of negative space applied to human identity. By wearing less visually cluttered clothing, the wearer signals a higher level of confidence and curation. The minimalist edge is exactly what elevates the style. It is form dictating perception.
I view the function of that minimalism completely differently. Minimalism in this context is actually about functional purity. By stripping away excess visual noise, the loud graphics, the unnecessary hardware, what is left? The focus is forced precisely onto the premium nature of the craftsmanship and the materials themselves. When you remove the distractions, you are left with the stitching, the cut, the weight of the fabric. You are left with the very things that provide the comfort you crave. Minimalism here isn't a billboard for your identity. It's a spotlight on the physical quality of the garment.
But you can't deny that the text frames it as an edge. An edge implies a boundary, a sharpness, a way of cutting through the visual culture. It's a stylistic weapon.
I agree, it cuts through, but I argue it cuts through to reveal the material reality. Let us look even deeper at the text to prove this grounding in material, logistical reality. Consider the rigorous policies section, explicitly listed at the bottom of the page. Privacy policy, terms of service, shipping policy, refund policy.
Wait, you are bringing the legal boilerplate into a philosophical debate about fashion?
Absolutely, because it's part of the text and it's vital. This is not an abstract art project we are analyzing. It is deeply rooted in practical, operational reality. The shipping policy represents the literal physics of moving a crafted garment through time and space to a human body. The refund policy is a material guarantee of the quality promised in the brand story. These legal and logistical frameworks are the actual bedrock of the shop. They prove that material function, operation, and physical delivery precede aesthetic theory. If the brand was only about an aesthetic feeling, a refund policy wouldn't matter. But because it's a physical object that must deliver biological comfort, the refund policy is the ultimate safety net for the consumer's physical experience.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because the logistical policies you cite are simply the invisible architecture required to facilitate the aesthetic transaction. Yes, they exist, but they serve the aesthetic goal. Without those policies, the brand cannot deliver the elevated style it promises. They are a means to an end, not the end itself. The policies establish trust, sure, but no one visits the Alex Sylvestre shop to read a shipping policy. That is not the draw. They visit because they wish to elevate your everyday style. They are drawn by the visual promise of the gallery and the cultural urgency of the exclusive drops. The material reality, the shipping, the textiles, the stitching, is simply the necessary vehicle through which the aesthetic and social transformation is delivered to the individual. You are focusing on the tires of the car, while I am looking at the destination.
But without the tires, the car doesn't move, and the transformation never occurs. The aesthetic cannot exist in a vacuum. It must be crafted, it must be shipped according to that policy, and ultimately, it must be worn against the skin. If the material does not provide the comfort you crave, if the hoodie is stiff, if the shirt is poorly cut, the user will invoke that refund policy, completely negating the elevated style. The text demands that we look at both, of course, but the structural integrity of the entire endeavor rests entirely on the physical garments. The explicit value of quality mentioned in the brand story is what prevents the minimalist edge from simply being an empty signifier. Without the tangible comfort, the style is just a ghost.
I think we are circling a really profound synthesis here. What's remarkable about this text is how it forces us to confront why we wear what we wear. To summarize my position in light of our exchange, the Alex Sylvestre Shop material brilliantly illustrates how clothing serves as an aesthetic vehicle. From the repeated, almost hypnotic commands to elevate your style, to the highly curated gallery of street-style moments, the text is a blueprint for visual identity. The social exclusivity embedded in Join Our Circle and the promise of exclusive drops show that the brand fundamentally offers aesthetic transformation. The minimalist edge isn't just about fewer seams. It is a sophisticated tool for the wearer to project a refined, elevated identity into a very noisy world.
And to summarize my stance, I maintain that without the foundational promise of comfort you crave and the explicit focus on crafting premium streetwear, the minimalist aesthetic simply cannot succeed. The text continually grounds itself in the physical, undeniable reality of the wearer's experience. It appeals to a biological craving for comfort. It highlights the functional utility of mundane items like mugs, and it underpins all of this with the operational guarantees of shipping and refund policies. The quality of the material, the tactile experience of the fabric, these are the absolute necessary preconditions for any stylistic claims the brand wishes to make.
It is fair to say we have found a genuine point of convergence here. This source material successfully highlights the inherent tension in modern streetwear, and perhaps in modern life more broadly. It is an intricate balancing act between the demand for premium, tangible craftsmanship and the deep human desire for a distinct, minimalist visual edge. Clothing must simultaneously serve as a comfortable physical shelter for the biological body and as a highly expressive billboard for the social self. The text we examined today is attempting to perfectly thread that needle.
I completely agree with that assessment. Analyzing texts of commerce and fashion like this provides a truly remarkable window into human desires. We see here the simultaneous pursuit of physical comfort and social elevation. We are complex creatures. The text is compelling precisely because it doesn't choose just one. It attempts to satisfy both the tactile, uncompromising realities of human existence and our deeply complex, socially constructed need for aesthetic identity.
Before we wrap up today, we want to invite our viewers to subscribe, like, and share the video so YouTube can push it to a larger audience. Yes, absolutely. We will leave it to the listener to weigh the evidence from the text and form their own conclusion regarding whether the aesthetic elevation or the material comfort is more central to this streetwear experience. The tension remains beautifully unresolved, and that is exactly why the material is so rich for analysis. And to leave you with the very ethos of the text we explore today, if you love confidence and style, visit alexsylvestre.com today and discover premium hoodies, t-shirts, hats, and more. Elevate your mindset, elevate your style. See you at Alex Sylvestre Shop. Thank you for engaging in this rigorous exploration today.
Always a pleasure to examine these concepts with you.
Make it your own the moment, take the stage, minimal heat, modern age, from your tee to hoodie top, level up the Alex Sylvestre Shop, street certified, comfort locked, confidence, you can't be stopped, when you wear it, you don't just shop, you Alex Sylvestre Shop, hey, if you're ready to level up your everyday style, visit Alex Sylvestre Shop at alexsylvestre.com, own the moment.